call to order the October 6,
okay.
2015
That's why I have a different microphone.
meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education.
758.
Everybody please stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board Secretary, has this meeting been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes, it has, Mr. McEnone.
Can you please roll call?
Mr. Balka?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Here.
Mr. Sayak?
Here.
Mrs. DePinto? Mrs. Trapp?
Here.
Mr. Walsh? Mr.
Here.
McEnone?
Present.
Mr. President, I move for executive session.
Okay, I need a motion to go into executive. Need a second?
Second.
Can you please read the resolution?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meeting Act and Chapter 231 PL 1975 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body is the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore it be resolved by the Board of Education of Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of any action upon the herein after specified subject matter. General nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, attorney-client privilege, various legal issues associated with the Sayreville War Memorial High School football program, and school board member ethics. And third item, negotiations, SEA contract 7116 to 6/30/19. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public. At such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists, this resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Balka?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Sayak?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Trapp?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. McEnone?
Yes. Board will go into executive session until approximately 19:30 hours.
Board goes longer than I do. See you, President. See you guys.
All right, Jeff. One quick question.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I'd like to call to order the October 6, 2015 meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Would everybody please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Board Secretary, this meeting has been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act.
Yes, it has, Mr.
Roll call,
McEnone.
please.
Mr. Balka?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Here.
Mr. Sayak?
Here.
Mrs. DePinto?
Here.
Mrs. Trapp?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. McEnone?
Executive summary, please.
This evening in executive session, there was no discussion on the personnel, which included but not limited to agenda items. Under attorney-client privilege, one, various legal issues associated with the Sayreville War Memorial High School football program, and second item, school board member ethics. Under negotiations, one item, the Sayreville Education Association contract from 7/1/16 to 6/30/19.
Dr. Lab, we have a presentation this evening.
Yes.
Very good.
Ms. Bloom?
Okay, you know, when you work in a school district, there is so much that goes on that so many people do not see because they happen, in essence, behind closed doors or behind the scenes. And you take a lot of things for granted. And, you know, to run a Board of Education, meeting takes a lot of people working hard together. And at times, we as a Board of Education have to stop to thank the incredible people that help us do our job, particularly our job in communicating to the public what goes on during meetings. And we have a very special person here with us this evening that we would like to thank because this is the person that videoed our meetings for the past 7 years and did an incredible job of it, making sure that people that happen to miss meetings could go on and listen to and see all the things that occurred during those meetings. And we want to take the time and Mrs. Bloom's going to help me right now take the time to recognize, celebrate, and say thank you to that very special person.
Thank you. It was really an oversight on all of our parts, but we didn't realize that Harrison was leaving us. So when we found out, everyone wanted to recognize him for his dedication. I knew Harrison as a student. I think we had a little problem that I helped you with at one point. I saved you, okay. I didn't know if you remembered that. But anyway, he has been here. I don't ever remember seeing him not here. I believe he was here when I was local president. I always attended meetings, and now on the other side of the table, he's getting my face on the camera, not always with a good expression, but he's doing his job, and he's moving on. He is now at King University. He has one more year, majoring in management, and we wanted to thank him for all that he has done for us and wish him well in the future. Harrison.
Appreciate it.
Everybody should have received the minutes from the last meeting, regular and executive. Anybody have any comments, questions, additions, deletions to the meeting minutes? If not, accept the motion to accept and file.
So moved.
Second the motion.
Okay, please take a roll call vote to accept and file the minutes.
Mr. Balcom?
Yes.
Mrs. Backo?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. McEnroe?
Yes. Dr. Labby, your agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Board of Education members, if I can direct your attention to Vision 2030 Finance and Infrastructure. We'll begin with number 1. We're asking you to approve the sale of 2 buses. You can find that on page 2. Number 2, on page 2, we're asking you to approve non-public Title 1A funds for some teachers that are in those non-public schools. As we all know, the New Child Left Behind grant provides us with what are called Title I funds, and we do get a non-public share for the number of students in our non-public schools within Sayreville borders. So that money is going to fund those teachers. Number 3, on page 2, we're asking you to approve some dictionaries that were donated to us by the South Amboy Sayreville Rotary Club, and we cannot thank them enough. This is an annual donation, and our kids and our teachers think the world of it. And again, we can't thank the South Amboy and Sayreville Rotary Club enough for their generous donation. Number 4, we're asking you to declare quite a bit of technology obsolete. You can find all of it on pages 2 through 6. Number 5, we're asking you to approve some purchase professional agreements for some teachers of the visually impaired. We do have several students in the district that are significantly visually impaired. They not only need a teacher of visually impaired to work with them, some as much as 12 hours a week, but they also need what are called mobility services so that they can, again, being visually impaired, utilize a cane so that they can move around and traverse through not only our school, but through the community. Number 6, we're asking you to approve Middlesex Regional Ed Services Commission to provide nursing services, and this again is through our non-public funding that we get. Again, we get that through Chapter 192 or 193. Mr. DeAndrea, I think it's 192?
192, 193.
192, 193, we have to provide funds for our non-public schools in the area of nursing. And that's what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to approve the Middlesex Regional Ed Services Commission to do that for the non-public schools in Sayreville. Number 7 through 16 on pages 7 through 9, we're asking you to approve several receiving tuition contracts, meaning these are districts that are paying us tuition for students to be here. 3 of those are for special education students from South Amboy. We have a great relationship with the South Amboy School District. They love our special education programs, and they will send students to our district to be in those programs. We do also have several other students, and those students are predominantly students that are either homeless, and according to the McKinney v. Vento law, what happens is if a child is homeless and they come into our district, we are responsible for educating them, but their district of residence, meaning where their guardians live or the last residence their guardians lived in, they are responsible for paying for that education. And then also, similarly, there is the Educational Stability Act, whereas if a child is in foster care, again, the district of residence of the guardian or the last district of residence for the guardian is responsible for paying us to educate those children. Items number 21 and 22 on page 10, we're asking you to approve some transportation, some trips with transportation costs, predominantly the senior and junior proms. Number 23, other trips with transportation costs on page 10. And finally, number 25, we're asking you to approve several 2015-16 school year private out-of-district school placement tuitions, as well as some paraprofessional services and other related services that we're providing to students with disabilities in private or public out-of-district placements. Any questions, Board of Education members, on Vision 2030 finance and infrastructure?
I have a question. On page 9, number 16, the donation of the flat-screen Dell monitors to Arlith, who made that donation?
I believe that was the PTO.
Oh, okay, that, they should be recognized, so,
Yeah, PTO.
okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hack?
With regard to the receiving tuition contracts, has there been any significant increase in the number of receiving students that we've seen this year? It seems like there's a whole bunch of them, but they may just be together, so I might
Well,
not.
to make a historical comparison, probably be better off if one of you were to make that conclusion. I think compared to last year, there might be a slight increase. Beyond last year, I wouldn't know.
But nothing significant?
No, I wouldn't say nothing significant more than a handful.
Okay.
Ms. Bloom?
Yeah, I just had a question. All this technology stuff that we're considering obsolete, are we disposing of it? Are we recycling it? What happens to it?
Not to speak too much for Mr. Glock-Malloy, and you can jump in if I'm wrong. I believe that there are some forms of it that we can break down and use for spare parts and so forth.
Spare parts, recycling, and if both of those avenues are exhausted, then we dispose of what's left over.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris,
Vision 2030 student achievement, we're asking you to approve the September 2015 HIB report. You might remember that we used to do that during the second meeting of the month, but we wanted to make sure that we had all of our tallies in for that month. So we're now moving it to the first meeting of the month, so you get a true picture of all the HIB cases during the month of September, which, by the way, was only one, and it was a not confirmed case. That can be found on page 13. Items number 2 through 11, and then 13 through 15, we're asking you to approve some co-curricular activities. That can be found also on pages 13 through 15. And finally, on page 12, we're asking you to approve 2 field trips with no costs to the Board of Education. And that can be found on page 14. Any question on Vision 2030 student achievement? Governance, we're asking you to approve the 2016-17 budget development calendar on pages 15 through 16. As Mr. DeAndrea pointed out during the last meeting, anything with an asterisk next to it is a date that we're not sure of yet because the Department of Education has not finalized and confirmed those dates. Any questions on that? No? And finally, Vision 2030 personnel, we do unfortunately have one resignation that we're asking you to accept. That's on page 16. Number 2, we're asking you to approve the 2014-15 HIB self-assessment. We're asking you to do that retroactively. That was information that we did have to provide the Department of Education. That can be found on page 16. Number 3, we're asking you to approve the anti-bullying coordinator, which of course is Ms. Reese for the district, as well as the HIB specialist throughout the district. Each school has an HIB specialist that investigates HIB matters. That can be found on page 16. Number 5 and 6 on page 17, we're asking you to approve, we're asking you to appoint 2 certified and 3 non-certified staff members. Number 7 on page 18, we're asking you to approve several staff members as life strategies teachers at the contractual rate given there for the 2015-16 school year. Number 9 on page 18, we're asking you to approve some leaves of absence. Number 11, we're asking you to appoint some teachers for what is called the Literacy Academy. And that's where we'll be providing an hour of literacy development supplemental tutoring in groups of 3 to 5 children 2 times a week. Dr. Shediak has been hard at work for the past several months developing this program, and I'm very, very excited to kick this program off. And this is one of the final steps in kicking this program off, appointing the teachers that will be working in that. Number 12, we're asking you to appoint some Title III ELL tutorial program teachers in grades 6 through 12. That can be found on page 20. Numbers 13 and 14 on page 20 and 21, we're asking you to approve some certified and non-certified substitutes. Number 15, we're asking you to approve the in-school suspension teacher at the middle school. You can find that on page 21. Also on 21, we're asking to approve 2 volunteer coaches at the high school. And finally, number 17 on pages 21 through 25, we're asking you to approve some professional days. Any question on Vision 2030 personnel?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any board members have any questions on the agenda items before I open up to the public?
Mr. McEnone, the superintendent's merit goals, I assume we have not received word back yet from the county?
I received feedback from the county with some revisions. I received it on Sunday. I sent those revisions back to the Executive County Superintendent, and I'm awaiting her final approval before I ask you to approve that. So you can expect that to be on the October 20th agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I will give it to you well in advance, though, of that, so you can take a long, hard look at it.
Thanks.
Anybody in the public, any questions on the agenda? I will open up again for the public shortly for any business that may come before this board. Anybody have any questions, comments on the agenda items? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion, and I'll accept the motion to accept and file the superintendent's report.
So moved.
Second the motion.
I need a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Balka?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
On page 22, I have to abstain on professional day for Kevin Bloom. I am required to abstain.
My apologies, let me get there. All others, yes?
Otherwise, yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraft?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. McEnroe?
Yes, under the committee reports, Finance and Infrastructure meet, Dan? No. Student Achievement, Mrs. Bacco, you have a little synopsis of our meeting?
Yes. Student Achievement Committee met. We discussed the summer reading list, which we had received complaints about, and we discussed the book that was in question, and it will be taken from the list. We were informed there's a committee of teachers who recommend these books, and that particular book had been on the reading list since 2009. Dr. Labby assured us that the supervisor will now be reading the books that make the list, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. We talked about the SAT prep classes. Notices were sent out through the app as well. We have 22 people enrolled at the time of the meeting. Has that changed?
That class actually finished. The new session started this week, and there are 13 students enrolled.
All right, so there's 13 in the new
Yes.
class. We talked about incentives to get more students enrolled, so we're going to try to think of some sort of incentive to get more students involved in this SAT prep, sort of how we did with the AP by reimbursing for 4s and 5s. We're going to try to think of a way to encourage more people to participate. We looked over the AP course enrollments, and our AP course enrollments have gone up in 2015-16 from 2014, from 322 to 365 students. We discussed, there was complaints on the algebra summer packet that was given out, so Mrs. Shediak gave us a list of the grades and how the students did on their summer work, and the grades had a very good range. So based on the scores, we didn't really see a problem just looking at the numbers. We discussed the middle school specials, and Ms. Shediak's going to create a committee to look over on trying to change some of the specials that we're doing in the middle school, as well as block scheduling. So we're going to do it together, and as well as the high school, there's going to be a committee for block scheduling. We discussed field trips.
There's been questions on how we determine what the board pays for versus what they don't pay for, whether they go on trips. There was a form instituted a few years back, I remember when Dr. Alfano was here, and the people who go on the trip now have to put whether it's curriculum-related and a lesson plan. But as far as the financial side, we're going to try to develop some criteria as to determine what the board would pay for versus what the student should pay for. And I think that's it. Is there anything else I missed?
Dr. Labby, there was something in the Star Ledger, either yesterday or today, about park results being released, and you had sent an email a couple of days ago. What's the status, and how's that going to be sent to the district?
Yeah, I could easily discuss that, but Dr. Shediak would probably do a much better job, so if you don't mind me deferring that over to her.
I was at a meeting about 2 weeks ago with the Assistant Commissioner who's in charge of the accountability and the testing, and in mid-October, statewide results will be released. Basically just saying, this is how New Jersey students did overall in this subject in grade 3 and grade 4. They will not release yet specific information regarding how different districts
So
scored.
the parent know how their kid scored?
Not yet, okay?
coming.
Typically what happens is they send out information to districts and it's embargoed for a certain period of time. The district should be getting information by mid-November about how the district did, and followed up by, in the first week in December, I believe they said, when we will get the actual individual student reports at that point.
And do they do comparisons with district factor group, with, things like that?
They showed us a sample of what it would look like. They'll be doing comparisons. They don't do it by district factor group, from what I could see. They will compare one school to another, I believe, within the district. They will they will give you statewide comparisons and comparisons to other states, because this is a test taken by a number of states.
Interesting.
So what happened to taking the test online would get us quicker results than paper tests?
You know what, the first year...
Just curious.
I think
Very
that's
good question.
Yes, really. The first year they give an assessment like this, they do a lot of norm setting, and they really take a close look at things. They are still saying that for this current school year, they're still talking about us getting results by the end of the school year. Because this year, don't forget, they're only going to be administering one test. It's not going to be two separate ones. So that'll take away some of the time necessary. They're still claiming that we're going to get results before the end of the school year this year. But last year at this time, they were telling us that too, so.
I don't know if we can believe
We'll
what
see.
they say.
Right.
Exactly.
Is that, I'm sorry, Ken.
No, go ahead.
Is that one test in half the time? So what I mean is, when it was 2 tests, how many hours was it for? Or, say it was for 6 hours. So is the one test for 6 hours again, or is it, I'm assuming not?
The time will be decreased. Yes.
So why last year was it 2 and this year it's 1? Last year, wasn't it 2 because they had to break up
Because of the controversy.
the material?
No, the first one was what they called a performance-based assessment, and where the students had to do a great deal of writing, responding to open-ended questions, both in the math and the language arts. The second part was strictly multiple choice. So now they're putting more of the multiple choice into the one test. So it'll be a combination, probably much like the NJS was, which was a combination.
Listen, I have my opinion of this process, but we'll wait to see what the results are.
Right,
They may be excellent results, who knows?
We can be very hopeful
being
and optimistic. That's great.
Mr. McEnroe, Mrs. Bloom and I also attended the county school board's meeting, and I think, Dr. Shediak, we saw the exact same presentation that you did. It was probably one of the best county school board meetings, and definitely one of the best DOE presentations I've seen in a long time. One of the things that I think also came out of that is they did some norming with the data, and this I think is of particular interest to the Student Achievement Committee. They did some norming with the data with PISA results that they had along with state assessments, And first of all, New Jersey and Massachusetts basically outperform the country in terms of academic achievement. But they always have. But what they found was that their state assessments, New Jersey and Massachusetts, actually had students performing worse than a subset of those students actually did when they took the PISA, which raised the question of, look, are the state's expectations of our students even higher than what the international expectations are with regard to student achievement? And that also got me thinking about district-to-district comparisons, and I know that we're looking at how do we get more of our students into more prestigious universities. Maybe one of the things we need to look at is if we can take our top 20 students and, through Dr. Labby, work with other districts to take a look at what is a normalized GPA for a student, the top 20 students in Sayreville versus in East Brunswick versus a Piscataway versus a North Brunswick, and try to correlate that back to how those same students perform on the SAT, a norm test, and just see if, the trends follow one another. In other words, if East Brunswick has a higher SAT score than Sayreville, does the grading system follow that? That make sense? It might give us some insight into whether or not our grading system is properly aligned with our nationally normed tests, such as the SAT. And I've never looked at that. I don't know if it is or not, but it got me thinking when they started talking about the state assessments versus the PISA. We're looking at how do we get more of our kids into the right colleges. I don't know if we've ever looked at how are our grades normed to the SAT and the expectations outside of Sayreville.
And they also said that a lot of the states set their bars very low. Like, for instance, Georgia seems to always outperform us, but Georgia has put in a really low level,
Right.
which, doesn't live up to what we expect from our kids, so.
Okay. Policy.
We have not met.
Personnel.
No meeting.
Any discussion items we'll open up for the public?
Wait, pilot committee?
Oh, yes, last night's meeting, the pilot
No,
committee.
we didn't have a pilot committee meeting last night, but we had one
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
Okay.
ago. The pilot committee met with representatives from the Borough Council.
We just want to explain pilot. so
All right,
people
the
understand.
pilot is payment in lieu of taxes, and currently, the Borough Council has awarded pilot agreements to residential neighborhood. The one by Club Benet is the one that they have agreed upon, and a pilot, when it's payment in lieu of taxes, there is no school taxes collected. All the money would go to the borough, and 5% would go to the county. So the pilot committee that was just created with Club Benet, we will not receive any revenue from. The biggest concern we have as a board is it appears that the National Lead property is also going to get a pilot contract, and that's going to be thousands of homes. So we met with the Borough Council. The council does have the authority to share the money with the school board, but it would be an agreement between the two of us. So we discussed the large quantity of housing that was going there, the number of students that we're probably going to get out of there, which we all agree is going to be more than what the so-called professionals are projecting.
300.
And even, we pretty much felt comfortable. Last year, when we started this committee, the board on our side had recommended that we get a 56% share because that's what we currently collected at the time for school taxes of property taxes. Nothing was ever decided. Now, the committee has changed a bit this year, and we're starting sort of all over. We talked about a percentage of the revenue that they received, and we also talked about our per pupil cost, which was approximately $12,000. On the council side, they seem more receptive to giving us a per pupil cost rather than a percentage, which we were in agreement with. We don't have a problem with that. So based on the number of students we would get out of these neighborhoods, then they would give us $12,000 per student. But nothing's been decided yet. We're going to have a follow-up meeting, and we met with 3 members of the Borough Council, and they are going to bring their CFO to the next meeting. I had suggested that we make this a public meeting instead of a committee meeting, and have the whole school board with the entire council meet, and offered that we would come to their council meeting. This committee can only meet on Monday nights because of the council constraints. The people on the council side, they can only meet on Monday nights. So I suggested that we make it just a public meeting, and this way the entire school board can be part of it, because I just think that this is a very crucial topic for the school board. This is very, if we don't get any of that share of the pilot money, the other alternatives would be to raise taxes, because we're not going to be able to afford to school these children, because we're all pretty confident that we're going to be getting a lot of children out of these neighborhoods. So I recommended that to the chair, Art Rittenhouse on the other side, that we meet for the entire council and the entire school board. And I think it would be better if it was a public meeting as well, so that parents understand what's really going on. He suggested that for the next meeting, he wanted to keep it at the committee level, and suggested that hopefully in November, maybe we could do it as a public meeting. So if we do that, I assume that we would have to advertise on our side too. So, so maybe at their November meeting, we can, as many as board members who want to come, we can do this in a public forum.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, putting this committee together was Mrs. Bacco's initiative, and I think this is probably one of the most significant issues facing the school district. The breakout, national lead, which is the big concern, is 2,000 units. That's what's planned to go in there. Of those 2,000 units, 494 of them are three-bedroom units, 654 are two-bedroom units, and then 852 would be one-bedroom units. The developer is claiming 300 school-age children generated from that. And now, since I've been in this town, when you looked at Town Lake and you looked at Lemire and all these other developments, none of them have ever come close to generating the number of school-age children that they predicted. It's always exceeded it, and at times doubled. So that's our biggest concern. Even if it was a minimum of 300, that would be a burden on the school district as we're configured right now. So we need to be proactive versus reactive, and Mrs. Bacco has proverbially taken the ball and run with it, and has put a committee together to take a look at that and to fight this fight, because I think it's a worthy fight and it's going to be significant for the district. So,
Mrs. Bacco, who's on the committee on the Borough Council side in addition to Mr. Rittenhouse?
This year now, the committee is Mr. Rittenhouse. He also chaired it last year, so he didn't change. And it's Mary Novak and Dan Buchanan.
Okay.
Okay.
And
on our side, it's me, Lucy Bloom, and Tom Bashada's on it. So.
But he's a member of the public.
He's a member, as a future member.
He's been talking about this for the last 10
Yeah.
years. So, and he's good to unleash on this issue, I think. Certainly makes the meetings colorful. So.
And he'll be on the board in January, so I figured the committee it could stay the same, but I'm hoping we can take this out of committee and just make it between the board and the council and get it to the public.
But they were receptive to a public meeting.
I only spoke to Art Rittenhouse. That does not mean that...
Does he chair the committee?
He chairs the committee, and he
doesn't mean it's
suggested
gonna
we do it in November. That was not a confirmation that the council agreed.
Okay. Well,
Mr. Bacino, can
Yes.
I ask you a question? I know you sit on the planning board. When this comes up about pilot program, how is this decided? What is the committee's feel? Do they understand?
well, it's not the planning board that
It's the planning
decides that,
board.
it's the borough council that has
Okay.
authority.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
Well,
know.
the planning board certainly, with me sitting on it, doesn't advocate a pilot program. I mean, you take a look, I always use the example of Jackson Township, when they put in Six Flags amusement park, how huge that is. That was a pilot program. So the town is not benefiting from that monstrosity there. And that's the damage of pilot programs. And I understand the motivation of the pilot program is to get the things developed, but it's, in the long run, it's detrimental. And it's not fair to the people that are paying taxes then to have residents come in, it's a pilot program.
So the pilot piece comes up then when it goes to the borough council,
Yeah,
once
the
it
planning
gets
board has
out
no
of
authority
planning?
to determine that.
Okay, so then the developer says, hey, I'd like a pilot, and they go,
The
oh, well...
borough
if
council
we-"
has to be, they're the governing body.
Okay.
The biggest difference here is there are pilot programs in Sayreville. They're all like, Red Oak was one, the steel mill, but they're
Industrial,
not
commercial.
residential units, so they don't have school children. So they might draw resources, but they wouldn't pull from us. So they might have police, fire, whatever, ambulance, so that's on their side of town. But the only residential one that I think is here is Gillette Manor, which you knew was not going to bring in children. So...
Well, Gillette Towers, the one that's going up.
Right, but, no, Gillette Manor.
Yeah, but Gillette Towers is being built too.
That's another one.
Right, but I'm
again,
just
that
talking about
won't-
currently.
Okay, currently,
Currently,
yes.
the only one residential is Gillette Manor, which also doesn't have.
Which is age restricted.
There's no, there's all seniors there, so there's no students coming out of there. So this is something very new that the Borough Council is doing.
And I think we're convinced that the majority of the public doesn't understand the
Right.
issue, on how detrimental it is to the school district based on taxes and the burden that will put on us, so. I
Because,
think,
you know, if you looked at, if we get, 1,000 students or whatever, that, I assume that's one of the criteria where you would have to go for a waiver, correct? And that would be granted? If we had to go for a tax waiver, if our enrollment
Yeah.
jumped by that type of money, if we didn't get any additional funds? So,
The only problem then, you'd create a valley the next year in revenue.
right, but so while the Borough Council may get this money, I don't think the public realizes the other side is not going, it's not going to be a wash for the public because the taxes are going to skyrocket on the other
And
side.
like we said, it's not just 1 year.
Right.
It's forever.
You're talking about, especially the lead pilot, program, that's probably going to yield well over 1,000 kids.
And I think also if you
We're already
read the
overcrowded. We're
details-
already bursting out of the seams now. The small pilot program that's over off of Route 35 by where Club Benet used to be, that alone is going to yield about 100 kids. And those kids are going to be designated to go to Eisenhower, which is already overcrowded. So we're talking about the impact it's going to be on this district is the building of schools, and not just one school, by the way, because then you're going to need to increase the size of your middle school, and then increase the size of your high school, potentially build a new middle school, and then staff these. We went ahead and did a small study on what it would cost to staff Salover yearly, and that was $2 million additional a year. So the impact on this community is going to be incredible.
And when Mrs. Backel mentioned about the future developments, what we sometimes forget is that there are current developments that haven't been built out yet. Lemire is totally not built out yet. They're still building, drive all the way in the back, there's still developments there. Town Lake is
Town
not
Lake.
built all the way out, and that's going to generate school-age children as well. We're not even considering that, so it's an issue, so, all right.
Yeah, the only thing that I think we probably felt comfortable coming at the meeting is they agreed that there will be an agreement to share the pilot money. It's the extent of how it's going to be shared. But I think everybody was, at least I left there thinking we were going to come to an agreement. It's a dollar amount that was in question. If you guys felt the same way, that's how I felt.
You're always the glasses half full person anyway.
I don't think so.
I don't know about that.
But, it was, I think it was Mary Novak, I think, who suggested to give us a per-student cost, which we were okay with.
We would just have to agree on the student and
12,000.
have language that includes when additional students come beyond what is projected.
Right,
So,
okay. Any other discussion for open up to the public?
I had that one thing for
What?
Models.
Oh,
I
yes.
just need to bring to the board approval, a couple meetings ago, I had brought up to Jonathan that Models was selling Bombers bags. So he had asked me to get pictures. I showed him the pictures tonight, which is an infringement on our trademark, so he just needs authorization for the board if we wish to pursue it with Models.
Just remind the board that years ago, we invested in trademarking the Bomber logo and name, and we sent letters out to online stores and brick and mortar stores to cease and desist, or we get a cut of their sales, and I think we need to be consistent. That's my feeling on it. What do you guys think?
Right, I agree. Right, I agree, and it takes away from our teams. So the money that, the teams would be selling those same clothes. So I'd rather see us make the kids make it.
So,
You give me that authority? Yep.
yes. Okay, anything else? If not, at this time, we'll open up to the public. If anything, they come before this board, please come up. Microphone, state your name and address. Mr. Bovary.
John Bovary, 1210 Harbor Club Drive. Dr. Labby, should we warn Eisenhower it's going to be a trailer park soon? Nothing wrong with that. My wife said in the back of that building, too. Kevin, top 20 kids, do they not already go to prestigious schools? Our top 20 kids.
I think the board has been pushing to have more of our students go to Ivy League schools, Princeton, et cetera.
So it's an Ivy is how we're classifying prestigious?
Yes, more, yes.
Gotcha. I'll let Caitlin know we just insulted William and Mary. My topic, wasn't those two, right? My topic tonight goes to that committee, student achievement. Sounds like you actually had a productive time, right? You know, some good stuff come out of that. And I want us to be proactive there as well as in the pilot, right? And what I've learned over the last couple weeks, very quickly, there's been a panic in more than just a handful of directions in this town of seniors who have to pass some qualifying test, one of 6 or 7, to get high school graduation requirements in this town, since Park is not being counted like Hesper used to be counted. So I'm getting, some people, helping some kids out with that. And I'm running into people, while there's a small audience here, I'm going to say something to all the parents of juniors, right? I'm also finding out more people actually watch this dopey meeting on TV than I would have ever imagined, right? I'm running into more and more people who actually don't come here but look to tune in, right? So maybe the message there. It starts with the PSAT next Wednesday, okay? And to anybody who wants to hear it, please understand that this is the change. It's not the SAT in March next year. The change is next week, okay? The PSAT always changes 6 months before the SAT does. So what the kids will see next Wednesday mirrors the SAT, with one huge change, right, that everybody needs to pass this to every kid possible. They've been trained their whole life, our high school kids, to not take random guesses on an SAT because there's a penalty for guessing, okay? The penalty has been removed starting next week on the PSAT, okay? It reverts to the ACT, and literally with 30 seconds to go, color in your favorite letter, okay? The kids that I'm working with, the PSAT is one of these qualifying tests that we're trying to get them to pass next week. They've got no clue. Nobody sat down with these kids and even told them the format has changed from last year's PSAT. That's where I'm hoping we can get more proactive on that, right? Switching gears to the SAT, which doesn't come until March of next year. Current juniors, and I got an article reinforcing this from Beth, hopefully she's passed it out to you folks, right? That the current juniors are the only class left that can report both versions of an SAT to a college, the old and the new, okay? We have 3 more shots at an old, and we seem to be addressing that with some private company that's coming in here, right? As far as the new, the first opportunity is March. Backing up to the old for a second, the last opportunity is January 25th. I went to the first night that this private company was tutoring a couple Tuesdays back, and I saw that there was 14 kids in the afternoon session, 8 in the evening for 22. And I can tell you the format of their class is why you've only got 13 now. So please take a better look at it, the way they're structuring the class, the kids talking to themselves, right? And they just don't like the format of the class. Not the instructors, but it's the format of the class itself, right? In conjunction with that January 25th, the last shot at an old SAT for current juniors, I strongly encourage you to speak to this current company and other companies. There's about 5 that do the same thing for varying prices, right? And get a prep class that starts before the holidays, maybe runs through the holidays if you could open the building for a couple days, like when basketball's in the building, and gets everybody ready for the last shot for January 25th, right? Okay. And final point on that. Teachers in this building who currently teach our SAT prep classes, whether they're in the curriculum or an after-school program or anything, please find a few dollars in your budget to encourage or maybe mandate that every one of those SAT prep teachers take the new SAT first time it's offered in March, so that they're familiar with the new format and we don't have people running around saying the last time we took an SAT was 40 years ago. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Sir?
Hi, good evening. My name is Bruce Kent. I'm sorry for my attire. I came directly from work, no disrespect. I'm a resident. I prefer not to give my address on video. Guys, I'm here for a reason tonight. Bryce is one of my children, and Bryce goes to UES. I have another one, Lacey, in Wilson. I'm the former vice president of the PTO at UES. My wife is the current president of Wilson PTO. I'm very involved in this town, and I'm going to get to the point right now. I'm going to try to give you the Reader's Digest version, because I want to go home and watch the Yankee game, rather than once upon a time. I'm not an educated man. I don't have all these degrees hanging up in my home or over my fireplace. However, what I am is I'm street smart. I'm a retired 30-year police officer with the Port Authority Police, 10 years of which I did juvenile, in the world's largest juvenile office in the country at the Port Authority bus terminal. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I retired in October. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to join the Board of Ed, and I did drive a bus for this district, and I was a permanent bus driver for this district for 6 months, awaiting a school security position in any district. But October, of course, the year started already, so we'll be on September. So I had to wait, so I drove a bus. I worked with probably the finest bus drivers, the caring people, all the way up from Debbie to the mechanics. And a hooray to them, 23 of them. Everything you read on social media is probably by the contractor, but I met the most caring people. Let's get to the point. I resigned. I hated to. I didn't want to resign, but I did, to follow my heart to a school safety officer. I got picked up by another district. I'd rather not talk about it. I got 5 phone calls from 5 different districts as soon as I read my resume. I understand this is a human resourcing, and it's a public hearing, and it's not about me. Okay? I didn't even get called in for an interview in this town, and I applied for it. I don't know why. I did my homework, and I found out that we have 4 security officers in this town. We have 3 at the high school, and we have 1 at the middle school. I'm not concerned with the SRO, the school resource officer, because those are 2 police officers, because every time they say to me, well, we have 2 SROs, they're not my concern. In my day, they were called their officers. Now they're called SROs. That's okay. My concern is SSO, school safety officers. I currently got picked up by a district that has 67 of us, and I'm enjoying it. My concern now is these children, my son. I don't know who took that active shooter drill today, but you put this town in panic. Panic, where the cell phones were blowing up, that there's an active shooter going on in this town. Not cool. I got a phone call at work today, too. There's an active shooter running around in Sayreville. I don't appreciate it. B, as I walk around, and as I drove the bus around for 6 months in this town, I notice a lot. You know what I notice? I notice custodians, which do a wonderful job in this school. Wonderful. I notice school secretaries, principal secretaries, office secretaries, buzzing people into buildings that have no business going into those buildings. I notice open windows on the first floor of our buildings. We have no security at all in our elementary schools. Let's try to put a Band-Aid on it before we make it a laceration. Let's try to take the aspirin and make our headaches go away, because you guys are going to go in the operating room. You're going to have problems. You need to put security in these schools. You need to put them in all these elementary schools. We can't leave it up to a custodian in the morning to direct traffic in front of our schools, which I noticed with the bus. It's not only traffic, it's being eyes and ears, and seeing who's getting out of what cars, when getting out of cars, and where they're going. Our parents in this town, many of them have come to me and said, Bruce, please address the board. Here I am. With that being said, I think we need to find the money somehow. Let's get a desk in our elementary schools so we don't have to depend on the school custodian along with the office people, secretaries, to let up people in and out of these schools. We have no cameras in the hallways. I'm in a system now. They call us. Little Johnny ran out of room 312. I'm in a room with cameras. There goes little Johnny in front of 302, 298. Roger, he's in front of 212. We got little Johnny. If one of our kids run out of an elementary school, he's going right out the door. We only have cameras for, I understand, at the doors. Nothing in the hallways. Unacceptable. You guys, you're going to have problems. With that being said, I'm going to go home with my son. He wants to watch a Yankee game. I will be back. I might be back with many more people. Let's open up. Am I upset that I didn't get the position? It's not about me. Yeah, I'm upset. I would have loved to work in the town that I'm here paying $13,000 a year in taxes. Let's get the school safe for these kids. I'm hearing all of this nonsense tonight. It's putting me to sleep. I want my kid to come home at the end of the day, and I hope you agree with me. Bad things are going on in this world. And God help if it happens in this town. And I address the board tonight and it happens, because I've brought it to your attention. So with that being said, no threats. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Anyone else from the public?
Brian McQuaid, 3 Swan Hill. My problem is with transportation.
Can you, sir, talk to the microphone? We can't hear you.
Brian McQuaid, 3 Swan Hill. My problem here tonight is with transportation. My daughter just started kindergarten and my neighbor's in 1st grade. And the Transportation Safety Board decides to move the bus stop. I asked her why. She tells me it's my privilege to do it and I can do what I want to do, which I don't think. My wife's been being picked up different the last 30 years. She moves it now. I got to walk into another town to bring my child. I call there because she says she doesn't want the bus going down into the open area to turn the kids around. I come down, walk back with my child, there goes the bus. I call there and I asked her why the bus is doing it. She hangs up on me and refuses to answer the phone back.
Where do you live, sir?
3 Swan Hill?
No, where do you live?
3 Swan Hill.
Oh, Swaddell, okay, okay.
So she moved me over in front of the South End YMCA when I live in Sayreville. I pay my taxes in Sayreville. My child should be picked up in Sayreville. There's no sidewalks, there's no crossing guards, and there's railroad tracks on the other side. They were picked up for the last 35, 40 years at the base of the driveway. The bus went down and turned around. Now she has them making a U-turn in the middle of a road where there's other school buses dropping off the kids at the YMCA and cars flying in and out of there dropping off the kids at the YMCA.
Sir, I'd like you to do, if you can write your name and phone number on a piece of paper, give it to this gentleman right here, Mr. DeAndre,
Yes, sir.
and he'll look into this and get back to you on what's going on here and the response that you got. So if you can do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
All right. Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll accept the motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Dr. Levy?
I would like to comment with regard to the person that commented about the active shooter drills today.
Yes.
Just to make sure everybody's aware, once a month, our schools have to perform a lockdown drill. And in that lockdown drill, you are simulating an active shooter in your building. It has to happen once a month. We were recently informed by the Department of Education that this year, they would be coming out with a task force consisting of a specialist from the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office, 2 specialists from the state, as a specialist from Homeland Security. They would be coming unannounced to perform this drill so that they could provide us with valuable feedback on how well we are doing in terms of implementing safety procedures to keep all of our students safe. They showed up today, and they will be coming back because we want them to see more of our schools. And today, you don't have a choice. When they come, they tell you, put your school in lockdown. This is an active shooter drill.
So they tell you to call it that and to do that?
Yes.
Now, I will say also that our letting parents know that they are calling it active shooter drill. And I've seen the letters that have gone home to parents indicating such. So today at the high school, as well as the middle school, the only thing different was there was a team of people in the hallways to collect data and evidence as to what they saw, what recommendations they would make for us to improve our security plans. The drills lasted 5 to 7 minutes, okay? Probably around closer to 5 minutes, so that we all had a chance to make sure, first of all, we couldn't see children, all doors were locked, and that the staff was doing what they were supposed to be doing according to those drills. I will tell you right now, overall, the drills went incredibly well. Incredibly well. However, I will also tell you that we have some things to work on. And thank goodness we had some very, very knowledgeable and experienced people interpreting the data that they saw and providing us with what I felt were incredible recommendations so that we can continue to keep our children safe.
And other districts went through the same thing this week, so we understand.
So were the active shooter drills only in the middle school and high school, or in all the schools today?
What happened was, we spent so much time debriefing after each of these meetings that we only had time to do 2 schools. So we asked them to come back, and I can't tell you the schools they're going to, but we asked them to come back to do 2 of our elementary schools. And that will happen later on this month, and by the way, that counts as one of our security drills for the month.
I have a question. Were the students or the teachers aware that it was, go ahead.
Were they aware that it was a drill?
Yes.
Yes, at the end, they were aware it was a
Oh,
drill.
at the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
But obviously, we don't want to tell them it's a drill when you're doing it. And I will say this, one of the things that we noticed, there is a small pocket of people that didn't take it serious. And that's a problem too. And that's one of the reasons why they come unannounced. They do not want us knowing, they don't want anyone knowing. And unfortunately, with security drills, you tend to fall into patterns. You know, it's like when it's in the winter, when you have that warm day, you can expect a fire drill, okay? Well, there are tendencies in which we do these security drills that word leaks out that we're doing a lockdown drill today, so people are aware. In order for us to properly train our staff and our students to respond, we have to develop motor muscular response. Meaning, when we call these drills, there can't be any thought. There has to be response, because you have seconds to get yourself and those children into a safe place. One of the things that was stressed to us, and if you look at the research, you look at all the shootings, every single shooting that has occurred at an institution of learning occurred in locked. Even in Oregon, the people that were killed in those classrooms were not locked. So the response by staff to immediately go into that lock mode and for kids to get to where they belong in an instant is huge. It's a matter of life and death. And we need to drill it, and we need to take it extremely serious when we drill it. And today, I can't tell you how important and how impactful it was to have an expert in this subject matter, more than one expert, by the way, interpret what they saw and provide us with invaluable recommendations how to make sure that we keep our staff and our students safe. Heaven forbid anything like this should ever occur in Sayreville.
Were our local police involved in that as well?
Yes, absolutely.
So then-
The chief of police was there, and 2 of his detectives were there.
Sergeant Pratt.
Both Sergeant Pratt's. Both of them.
But either,
Both Detective Spraggs were there, yes. Yeah.
And I have a follow-up. So if there was an actual shooter, how would that announcement go out?
It wouldn't go out. In fact, I can't tell you what they gave us because, I'd be giving away secrets. But here's the one thing. If there was ever an active shooter in the building, we train our staff and our students to stay in that classroom until law enforcement gets to your door. And they go door to door to door. Because the last thing you want to do is let children out before you know the threat has been neutralized.
Right. What I mean is, how do the parents find out about it? Does a phone call go out to, from the superintendent's office?
I will send an email out district-wide.
I believe that's what the letters from the principals, when the letters.
They send those letters out.
The letters.
These happen every month. The only thing different this month in those 2 schools was we had about 8 or 9 people helping us walk around the building. It was still the same call, about the same amount of time. We didn't evacuate. The only thing is, we had people at certain parts of the building to watch and to learn and to take in an information.
So from what I'm hearing, some of the parents were concerned because they were getting calls from their kids who have cell phones. So they were getting those calls, and then a couple of parents said, well, yeah, but as Beth was saying, the superintendent or somebody would reach out, send out the email or send out a phone call.
If there was a real lockdown drill, yeah, we would immediately.
A real lockdown, no.
We would immediately let people know.
And that's what the letter came home from the principal. It said, should a real emergency
Correct.
occur, parents will be notified by central administration.
Nonetheless, we do plan on sending an email to parents, letting them know this incredible opportunity that we had today, and that we'll have that same opportunity later on this month to learn more and more about how we can continue to protect all of our students and staff.
Right. Unfortunately, we have to do that.
Yeah.
So,
This
absolutely.
is the day and age we live in.
And part of the fear probably came from, too, as well as having the drill in such close proximity to what just happened nationally as well, which that wasn't our call.
No.
Look, and Mr. Kent and I had a very good conversation at Sayreville Day, so I know where he's coming from and understand his concerns. But, there's a lot going on in the district in this area. We're proactive. We work with the police department. We don't advertise a lot of the things. So, I understand. And you're absolutely right. The best security in the world is great, but if you leave a door unlocked, that's a problem. And we've got to constantly harp on that. Everybody in that building owns that, keeping them doors locked.
And it's a difference between me telling people, building principal telling people, but when you have experts from Homeland Security, you have experts from the state police, you have experts from the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office saying it, sometimes people take it a little bit more serious.
Okay. Since the board had additional discussion, anybody else from the public like to ask any questions? I'll open it up again. If not, I'll accept the motion again for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.